ready to travel? We got all the travel buzz here on Smart People, Travel Wise with Alvin Adriano on PHLV Radio.
Greetings and happy holidays here from Smart People, Travel Wise. Welcome back to our show, and I'm so thankful for all of you being here back with us. It certainly has been a challenging year. However, with travel all but sure to come back faster and harder than before, we're happy to see people out and about and really quenching their thirst for curiosity. No matter where you are, again, I can't thank each one of you for all of your support of our show. And I hope with all of us, we continue to inspire each other to travel the world. Now, if you're catching the show for the first time, my name is Alvin Adriano, CEO of TravelWise International, and I'm your host for today. But before we get started, I want all of you to leave a comment about where you plan to go first. Leave it in the comments below, whatever vacation, trip you plan on taking next year. Post it in the comments and let's get excited for all the places that everyone's really going to see. But on today's show, I have a pleasure of bringing out a colleague that I've been working with since 2019, I think. And it's such an influential person in the travel community. Often behind the scenes, our guest today is one of the biggest advocates and defenders for travel advisors and has steadily navigated our industry through some pretty rough waters. As you know, we all take lead from great leaders, and I'm so honored to bring Executive Vice President of Advocacy for ASTA, which is the American Society of Travel Advisors. Please smash those heart buttons for the smartest guy in the room most of the time, Mr. Eben Peck. How are you doing, Eben?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Alvin. Great to see you.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. I know you're a busy man, but I spoke briefly about your background. Could you tell all the viewers what the life of an Executive Vice President of Advocacy is like?
Sure. Well, American Society of Travel Advisors, ASTA, we're the National Trade Association for travel agencies of all shapes and sizes and business models. We have 17,000 member companies across the country, some very large, most very small, like yours, Alvin. Mm-hmm. And we advocate for our members within the government, within the industry, and before the traveling public, trying to drive home the message that when consumers use a travel advisor, they have a better trip.
Awesome. Wow. So, I mean, these 2 years have been some pretty challenging times for all of us, huh? So how has the pandemic changed travel, the climate, the sentiment, and how has your work changed in all of that?
Sure. Well, certainly a lot more gray hair than I had 2 years ago, if you remember. Travel's always been a little complicated. There's always been, possibility of things going wrong when you're on the road, whether it's weather or natural disasters, et cetera. Especially international travel. The more complicated your itinerary is, there's always things that can go wrong. That's why you use a travel advisor. Mm-hmm. But it's gotten infinitely more complicated over the past 2 years. I'm sure that you could agree.
Yeah.
So it's been challenging from that aspect, just from sort of how our members do their business, and then also from the ASTA standpoint. Again, we're the main advocate with the government, and frankly, before COVID, most of our members just wanted to be left alone by the government. Just let us run our businesses. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, the government just loomed so large, whether it's travel restrictions, whether it's making sure that our members get access to the various federal relief programs. It's this big looming thing that's come over our industry and remains there, unfortunately.
Mm-hmm. I think it's funny how before, we weren't very advocates, or we didn't really make splashes in Capitol Hill. Travel advisors weren't very, well known or visible. But with all the things changing, with travel restrictions, entry requirements, I think it's more evident and more apparent that we be more, united in our stand for advocacy during this time. How has that changed? And has advisors been more, jumped on the bandwagon to be more vocal about their stances?
The short answer is yes. So if you remember, this is kind of before our time, but there was a time that you couldn't really book a trip on your own. You kind of had to use a travel agent, or you had to go to the airport and pay cash for a ticket. Mm-hmm. Obviously, things changed in the 80s and 90s, and the rise of the internet and whatnot, which was supposed to put us all out of business.
Yeah.
So back in the day, we used to have they called it the March on Washington, and there'd be 400 people. I'm told it wasn't very well organized. They just kind of walked up. Back in those days, you could just kind of walk into the Capitol, no security, no nothing. We stopped doing that at some point. The industry shrunk a little bit. But in the past 10, 15 years, there's really been an upswing, I think, not just in terms of the travel industry as a whole. I'm talking about pre-COVID. The pie was growing, but the proportion of people that were booking their trips through a travel agent continued to grow a little bit each year. So we started back in 2014. This is during my time. We restarted the tradition of having people come to Washington. We had 40 people come that first year, which was great. And then right before COVID, we had that number up to 225 people, including yourself, Alvin. And I noticed a huge shift in terms of not just from that day itself, but from doing my work on a day-to-day basis, that when I first started here in 2012, I would get a lot of travel agents. You guys are still around. You know, I thought the internet killed you. Hearing that much less over the years and more, oh, you know, I just went on my honeymoon and we used a travel agent and everything was great. And another aspect of what we've been doing, including yourself, is, you know, when we go up to Capitol Hill once a year, and of course we're doing stuff throughout the year too. The congressional staff would start to recognize the people coming into these meetings, say, hey, Jay, you know, how's your business? So I have seen the needle move. And then of course, COVID hit, government restrictions, government rules, government laws became so important. People are really engaged nowadays.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And I think, you know, we're starting to see us use some of our tactics or strategies with our consumers in the same way we do it with our elected officials. You know, we talk about relationships, building relationship with our consumers, with our suppliers. Well, I think now that we're looking at it at a global stance, like, hey, you know, we can also reach out our network and include more people. And I think it's very apparent now that, you know, our industry is such it contains so many different industries within itself that it's important for us to have a voice in these type of policies and laws that are being put in place. So I think it's great, and all the work that you've been doing, but you don't do it alone. I know there's a committee in ASTA that runs with you and who helps support your initiatives. Can you talk about ASTA PAC and how they support you and your staff?
Sure. So we're a nonprofit national trade association. We're here in Alexandria, Virginia, just a couple miles from you, Alvin. We have 25 members on staff. So we're pretty small in the grand scheme of things. So we're heavily reliant on our volunteers. So of those 17,000 members that I mentioned, you know, some pay their dues every year and call it a day. And that's great. They're supportive of the National Trade Association. But we have folks who are really engaged in our government affairs work, whether that's coming to legislative day every year, or whether that's volunteering for other roles. We will have congressional calls or state legislative calls that come up at a moment's notice. And we love having a constituent on those calls because they don't want to hear from the hated Washington lobbyist. You know, they want to hear from their constituents. But yes, so the most engaged members, I would say, we have a committee. It's called the Government and Political Affairs Committee. And that's about 15 people, including Alvin. And that group helps us with a couple of things. So one is if there's a new government issue, new government policy issue that we're not sure if we want to engage on it, or we're not sure what our position should be, because we're not travel advisors. We're, you know, either we're communications professionals or government affairs professionals. So we don't always know just from the top of our head how a policy issue is going to impact the business. So we have these 15 folks and we get to bounce ideas off of them. You know, Is this something that we should even care about? Is it good? Is it bad? What should our position be? So that's extremely helpful to have this group of professionals to bounce this stuff off of. This group of volunteers also helps us raise money for our Political Action Committee, PAC, ASTA PAC it's called. It's been around since 1979. It's a separate fund that we're allowed to do under federal election law, basically where we pool funds from our members, voluntary funds, goes to the separate account, and we use that to engage in the political process. Now, what does that mean? That means make campaign contributions to members of Congress and aspiring members of Congress. And occasionally we get an ASTA member that runs for office. And of course, we're going to support them. This is, you know, you might disagree with the system. Money talks in Washington, whether you like it or not. And either we can engage in this process, we can play the game like everybody else is doing, or we can just sort of hope for the best. We choose to engage. So this group helps us raise money for this pool of funds, and it's incredibly important to what we do.
Oh no, I totally agree, and I think it's impactful for those to get perspective from travel advisors, frontliners, to be able to give you their insights on what policies that they would like to support. And I think I beg to ask, because we talk about how large the travel agent community is, and you talk about these 15 people like myself who chime in. But I do want to ask, whose responsibility is it for us to advocate and really fight for the travel advisor community? Some people say it's ASTA, some people say it's the members. How can we all get unified in this way to support our united stance?
I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to those in the industry. I'm sorry to say, not every travel advisor is a member of their national trade association. It depends on what industry you're in, whether you're heavily regulated or sort of lightly regulated. I would say we were sort of moderately regulated before COVID. So the people in the industry have to decide, do we need a voice in Washington, or are we good? And some industries say, we're good, just leave us alone. Mm-hmm. And others realize that we need to have somebody there full time, or 25 people here full time, to make sure that they're watching the government, et cetera, and making sure that our interests are protected, or at least telling us what's going on or what's coming down the pike. And that's happened a lot. What was it, a week ago or this week? Is brand new travel restrictions.
Every day, brother, every day.
So it's important to have somebody here. I'm glad that our members recognize that, to just keep an eye on things, let them know what's going on, and then take action when appropriate.
Yeah, I believe so too. I think everyone needs a whistleblower. I think we're all in due, because we have to protect our interests and also voice out our concerns. It's really important for every industry to be represented on Capitol Hill to show how we have an influence or impactful into the economy. And we haven't even talked.
Sorry, I just want to say one thing. There's an old Washington saying: if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. So, and it's true. I mean, other industry groups, even within the industry, have large armies of lobbyists, and they're not afraid to stick somebody else with the bill if they can. And if you're not there, there's a risk of that.
Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, you have to play, and money talks in everywhere. Everywhere plays. So corporations, businesses, we all play the money game. And so being able to understand how that works, it's important for all of us, so that we can get our initiatives or our policies that we want to support in Washington. So you mentioned, being advocate and this having, I guess, an overpacked workload these last 2 years. So what are some of the highlights of your advocacy that you guys have been really proud of over these last 2 years?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly been a grind, no doubt about that. I guess what I'm most proud of over the past 2 years, if you remember, the Congress passed a series of really massive relief bills. And so we were really scrambling before the bills were passed to make sure that our members, as many of our members as possible, qualified for as many of the programs as possible. And we did a survey a couple months later, and we found that 80% of our members were able to access at least one of the programs. And that helped them get through the trauma of COVID, which unfortunately is still ongoing. And I hear every time I talk to a member, especially if we have them on a call with member of Congress, without the PPP program, I would be out of business. So we're proud of our work there. There's a couple other things that kind of bright spots over the past year. One that you were involved with, that legislative day, Alaska cruising. So due to this quirk in federal law from 1886, essentially cruise ships can't go from Seattle to Alaska without stopping in Canada first. Whatever. Never an issue before, until I think it was February of 2021, Canada said our ports are closed until further notice. So that decision meant that basically the entire Alaska cruise season, and my understanding is they all basically from Seattle to Alaska and back, dozens, hundreds of ships, tons of economic activity, including like in the port towns. The entire season was going to be wiped out. So we had to get Congress to make a tweak to this law that said, basically these ships can go. They don't have to stop in Canada until Canada reopens its ports. And so the bill was like one page long, but if you remember, we were pushing that during our legislative day in May, and the bill passed basically the next day and got signed into law 2 days later. Now it wasn't just us that was pushing, but I was really proud of that. I mean, that's something that it happened quick.
Yeah.
Instant gratification is usually not a thing when you're dealing with the government, but it was something that happened like that, and it ships in the water means revenue for our members, and so it was dark days. That was a ray of light. So proud of that too.
No, I love that. And I think it begs for everyone to understand too. It did not only benefit the travel advisor community, it benefited a lot of communities out in Alaska, all the cruise ship, the staff out there. I mean, so many people, the airlines, the transfers, hotels, people don't realize how much travel and tourism make up of the global GDP, and how many industries are within our like umbrella of stuff. So, when people see how we advocate, it's not only for the travel advisors, it's all for in general for the travel. We're talking about entry requirements, entry restrictions, health protocols, and we've advocated a lot for the CDC and the relaxation of travel restrictions too, as well. Correct?
No, it's a great point. I mean, obviously these things impact our members' businesses, and that's sort of the thing we think of first. But there's just to take the travel restrictions. I mean, there's hundreds of thousands, millions of people who haven't been able to see friends and family. They've had to do Zoom funerals. I mean, it's heartbreaking. They have, husband and wife has been split up for 2 years. So it's not just about us and our businesses. This affects so many people and so many other businesses too. And yes, so we of course we advocate for our members, but we advocate for the industry as a whole, and we advocate for people to travel, not just for our economic interests, but for their mental health, for the well-being of our society, for the well-being for world peace. I mean, I know I'm sounding cheesy, but if you travel to places, then you learn about different cultures, and I think it lessens the chance of conflict.
Yeah. When you break bread with your friends and enemies, it's the same thing. We start understanding the differences, and we start finding resolutions instead of conflicts. I think you're totally right. And I think, you mentioned it now. You mentioned it earlier, how the internet was supposed to destroy or, make travel advisors extinct. Has the pandemic, in your opinion, changed the way that consumers see travel advisors these days?
I think so. There's an irony here. The value proposition has never been stronger for why you would use a travel professional. I think this was shown most brightly at the very beginning of the pandemic, when you had hundreds of thousands of Americans stranded overseas and having to get home, flights canceled, et cetera. And as far as we can tell, if you used a travel advisor, you were more likely to be able to get home in one piece. You didn't have to spend 8-10 hours on hold with airlines and whatnot. And then those who did it themselves had a harder time. So the value proposition has never been stronger. I think everyone we talk to on Capitol Hill understands that now. But we have serious business challenges. Let's be honest. I mean, the average member of ours, they made their money off of cruising. They made their money off of international travel. The more exotic, the more complicated the itinerary, the more it makes sense to use a travel advisor. And then on the business side, high volume, high frequency business travel. Now, those are the three things that went to zero overnight and stayed there for a long, long time, and it's just starting to inch back. So our value proposition has never been stronger, but there might be less of us left at the end of this, unfortunately, unless Congress acts. Yeah,
and that's the tough pill to swallow when you need help and you need support. This is why it's really important to have a trade association, to make sure that they know our stories, they know where we're coming from, and that we can at least get our voice heard in these type of situations. We talk about how the pandemic really affected many of our lives and our industry. But we talked about how people are a little bit more mindful about how the value of a travel advisor. Is there anything else that really stands out that came out good from the pandemic?
I'm trying to think. I mean, I have some industry ideas, and I have some personal ideas as well. I'm sure you do too. A lot of the, we call them travel suppliers. So airlines, cruise lines, et cetera. when COVID hit, changed a lot of their policies, whether it's on change fees or giving you future credits, and the client wouldn't lose money, wouldn't lose out on that trip. They got a lot more flexible when it comes to dealing with clients. So I think that's definitely been helpful. Trying to think what else. If you just think about, well, from what I do, it's funny when we were dealing with Capitol Hill pre-COVID, even like I'm talking like 2019, everything was in person. Everything. We never even had a phone call with Hill staffer. Anything, any business you wanted to do, you had to come to the office. Let's sit down. Obviously, that changed. I'm pretty sure myself and my former colleague had like the last Capitol Hill meeting on March 12th, 2020, because we were sitting in the meeting and he's like, we're not going to see you guys again for a long time.
the foreshadowing.
That's right. So business used to be done completely in person there. So then they pivoted to Zooms, tons and tons of Zooms and Teams and whatnot. Anyway, all this, which is what it is. We're all sick of Zoom. I get that. But from an advocacy standpoint, if I have a congressional call in the old days, I would have to, I mean, it's one thing for you in Fort Washington, but to bring somebody from California here to do one meeting, I mean, it was hard. That's why we did it during Ledge Day altogether. But now I can bring constituents onto these calls almost at a moment's notice. Wow. So we've had great calls with 4 or 5 constituents and the congressional staff or even the member of Congress themselves. So that's been helpful. And then, from a personal standpoint, our office was closed for a long time. I was running a lot more than I used to, which was nice. And I think everybody has had to train themselves on sort of just taking care of your mental health. It's been a stressful time, not just in our industry, but in many. Just the importance of taking care of yourself as you do your work.
That's awesome. I did the opposite. I figured out personally how to reduce my commute to the refrigerator, so my desk slowly got closer and closer, so I didn't have to walk so far. So good for you, Eben. But I mean, now that we're headed to the travel revitalization, things are starting to pick up. Are there any projects in the pipeline for 2022 or anything that you can mention to our viewers now?
So just a couple things that come to mind. So one of the things that we do in addition to the government stuff is lots of stuff with the consumer press or sort of mainstream media. And one of the messages we want to be driving home is that it might seem like a bad time to get into the industry, but actually it's a pretty good time to get into the industry. And this with travel coming back up, this is a great career. Most of our members have been in the business for decades. I mean, you come in and you never leave. Your day-to-day is like making people's dreams come true. It's a very fulfilling job. And of course, you get to travel too. You get to travel to cool destinations. So we've launched a new education program called Becoming a Travel Advisor, or a roadmap to becoming a travel advisor. And it's targeted at new entrants. And we're seeing more of them of late. It's some younger people. It's some second career people. Maybe they were bankers or they were lawyers or they had a high stress job. And they, in their personal time, they would plan their family travel, and they decide maybe they want to do this for a living. So we have an new education program that's trying to make that easier and walk them through the steps of how you get into this industry. And hopefully by the time they get in, things will be back to 2019 levels. From an ASTA standpoint, we're redoing our website. Everybody redoes their website. It's not terribly exciting, but it's long overdue in our case. So we're spending a lot of time on that. Probably the one that I'm most excited about is we're doing I don't know if you're not a golfer, Alvin. I remember because I get you to come to one, but we're doing an ASTA event at St. Andrews in Scotland where we will play golf on the old course. And you might not know what that means, but if you're a golfer, you know that's like the first golf course ever created, and it's kind of the home of golf. So I'm really excited about that. That's in April. Let's hope there's no travel restrictions.
Wow, so exciting! That's so exciting. I mean, again, I love what you were saying about. Well, let me start off with this. Crisis is a true revealer. We all know from a crisis, there's always opportunities, and so I love the fact that you highlighted it because as a second generation travel advisor, I know and seen the ups and valleys. And I know from this pandemic there's going to be a lot of opportunities for travel for people who want to join the industry to really show, and it really accelerated our all the members, because we had to use Zoom. We had to learn how to use computers more often, how to automate workflows. And so I think it's going to be an explosion. It's going to be a renaissance for travel advisors in general. And I'm really excited to see how ASTA intertwines that with all the modernizations, innovations that it's still coming out from the pandemic. So I'm really, really excited to see how we integrate all of that into our membership, into our industry, into all the advisors coming up.
Definitely.
So, I like to always ask, it sounds like it's St. Andrews, but where would you like to travel next?
Well, perhaps it's a failure of imagination. Maybe I need to come over to Fort Washington and we can brainstorm. But my wife and I took 3 fantastic trips right before we had kids, when you could do such things. We did Southern Africa, South Africa, went on safari, and then spent a week in Cape Town area. That was phenomenal. Our honeymoon was in the Oaxaca section of Mexico, southern Mexico, which was fantastic. I was just stunned by, I thought I knew what Mexican food was based on sort of Tex-Mex, but the food was just phenomenal. The people were tremendous. There's, it's not even Mayan ruins, it's like pre-Aztec ruins just outside of the city. It was just a tremendous trip. And then, of course, we went to Hawaii, which anybody who's been to Hawaii knows that it's fantastic. So first thing, I want to do those 3 again, and then see if I have any money left.
Well, I mean, I still have to invite you to Philippines. So
yes,
you have to put that on your show, on your bucket list. So we're definitely going to have to take you to Philippines. If you think Hawaii is beautiful, wait till you come to Philippines. So yeah. I have my work cut out for me now.
All right.
So awesome. But yeah, any last minute tips or advice for all viewers before you head out, Eben?
I just want to stress again, I mean, obviously this is what I'm going to say. This is my job, but I truly believe it. Using a travel advisor is going to mean that you get a better trip. You're going to realize things about how you travel that you didn't know you needed to know. People like Alvin will talk to you about different destinations that maybe you haven't thought of before. So it's really, that is the way to book your trips. And considering the situation we're in right now, I just encourage folks to don't be too hasty to pull the trigger to cancel trips. I mean, think about it, look at your options, whether it's, educate yourself before making a decision, whether it's, do I want to travel next week, whether it's, postponing rather than canceling. Just be deliberate, because we all need a vacation nowadays. And, I think people who go through with their trips will be very happy that they did. So yeah. I guess those are my words of advice.
Thank you. So insightful and so much passion in your words. And I'm so thankful for you to be able to spend a couple of minutes of your time. I know you're super busy. Thank you so much, Eben. And I really appreciate you spending some time with us here today. You bet. Thank you, Alvin. Take care, buddy. So for all of our viewers, I know you guys had this was a great interview. It's a different perspective, different point of view, where most people don't see the behind the scenes of what happens in the travel industry. Me being in the industry for so long, and being a second generation travel advisors, these are the things that we support to promote our industry. Looking at the travel industry from all the different points helps us so we can really understand how things work. Travel is a very complicated industry with global contributions, reaching about 10% of global GDP. And not only that, travel tourism really is responsible for 1 out of 4 jobs, and continues to be the second largest industry in the world. It's often overlooked, and the travel industry continues to be resilient and united in the travel revitalization. And we have champions like Eben to guide us through it. So if you're not already working with a travel advisor, please make sure to reach out to one and book your next vacation. Like most services before, you may have never used a travel advisor before, but you know what? It's the right time to start. You can also reach out to our award-winning travel agency, TravelWise International, at 301-248-8898, or you can visit us on the web at www.itravelwise.com. We can help you plan an amazing vacation while removing the stress and anxiety of planning it or even managing it yourself. And you can also catch our show every Tuesday at 12 p.m. Pacific time or 3 p.m. East Coast time, PHLV Radio. It's available on Facebook, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Or even better, you can catch us on the PHLV radio app. It's available on all iOS and Apple devices. So thank you to all of our viewers and listeners who've been able to join us today. And I hope and wish everyone a happy New Year's. Until next time, smart people travel wise.
Are you ready to travel? We got all the travel buzz here on Smart People Travel Wise with Alvin Adriano on PHLV Radio.